So you have a briefing note from QP Local 79 on this matter as well. But before I start into, you can have it to read, I'm now reminiscing about this process last year. On February 15th, the mayor of this city and a majority of councillors voted not to sustain the shelter budget. Well, I'm tempted to read out those names. I think the more prudent goal is to ensure those names vote in the other direction for the 2018 budget. That same day, a young Indigenous man died, a homeless man died, and that generated a concern for a brief period of time that our shelters actually have the capacity to serve the growing number of homeless in this city. I want to thank the community groups that are out here today holding our feet to the fire to ensure that city services and parallel services are in place to serve our homeless. But I think that we have to do the right thing and ensure that councillors understand what's happening in our city and to support the growing number of homeless in our city. Local 79 has 5 recommendations to make. 1, include the 2018 shelter infrastructure plan, the opening of 1,000 new shelter beds to meet the standard of 90% shelter capacity across all sectors. This must include low-threshold harm reduction-focused shelters. 2, direct staff to complete its long-term sustainability plan for staffing in shelters as part of the 2018 budget process. Out of last year's budget, there was a commitment not only to cut the positions and to find a solution to keep the positions in place, there was also a commitment to have a sustainability plan for staffing in shelters. The city needs to move forward, not just react to what happened last year and say we're going to do a sustainability plan, but actually do it. Our staff are overwhelmed. The shelter system is overwhelmed. I went out to Peter Street the other day and just to check in on staff and how things were going because we know they're overburdened. They couldn't talk because they indicated, I quote, "We're in crisis mode. I don't have time." But I'm hearing through our representatives that there are huge concerns about the capacity. So that sustainability plan ought to include the number of staff, a review of its current availability and scheduling practices to make sure that people are actually scheduled and sustained and predictable so that the service is more predictable. 3, direct staff to include a plan to deal with overcrowding and understaffing at the Assessment and Referral Centre located at 129 Peter Street. 4, direct staff to include investments in new family shelters parallel to the funding of a new assessment and referral center, so families assessing this service will have housing to be referred to. What ought to be included in that is not only a referral center, but to ensure that the city itself has enough space and parallel community service have enough space for families to go. The only place that I'm aware of where city direct operations allow a woman to bring her partner in so that they're together is out on Kingston Road. The city really has to do a better job both at direct services and at other community agencies to ensure homeless families can be housed. And 5, direct staff to include and consult with Local 79 on staffing models and training as the city develops an implementation its new service model in the 5 pilot shelter sites. So you can read the rest of our briefing note, but we have, just returning to the Peter Street situation, we have our health and safety people looking into what's happening there in terms of our staffing. I would borrow a line from the CLC in our health and safety world, which is we should continue to mourn for the dead, but we have to fight for the living to make sure that they are still alive, those homeless on our streets.